Hi.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My talk starts recognizing Commissioner Fambro and Commissioner Gallegos, who I seriously regret are not here, Commissioner O'Donnell, Vice Chair Brush, Madam Chair Hill. We are pleased to appear before you. We do have a packet that we would like to enter into the record of some additional materials that have come to us since we brought in the application binder. It includes additional letters of support. It includes materials that we provided to the community during the process of notifying the community that we were working on this project, and then individual letters that were sent, I believe, directly to commissioners that we received copies of. To begin our presentation, we want to thank the Planning Department, Mr. Perea, Chief Planner, Director Rachel Romero, and former Director Edward B. Hill. Our County Manager, Brent Jaramillo, County Attorney Randy Audio, and Ranchos de Taos Neighborhood Association Attorney Frank Koppler. We also want to recognize El Prado Traditional Historic Community for laying the groundwork for this process in Taos County. And of course, gratitude and thanks to the entire Ranchos de Taos Neighborhood Association Board of Directors who have held fast in pursuit of this designation. A heartfelt thanks goes to everyone who has supported this project in any way, large and small. It was all needed to bring us here today. It's clear, I thought I was going to go after the speakers, so this is,
Sorry.
it's clear from those who have spoken or will speak and sent letters of support that there's an overwhelming desire that Las Comunidades del Valle de los Ranchos be designated a traditional historic community by this commission this morning. In addition to individual letters, it is important to note that the letters of support are from the Taos Valley Acequia Association, Acequia Commissions, all three mutual domestics in the valley, El Valle Water and Sanitation District, both community centers, and the Cristobal de la Serna land grant. 16 years ago, we learned of the traditional historic community statutes. However, they only applied to Santa Fe County. But we envisioned the possibility of ranchos being protected. This would require changing state law. To our good fortune, the stars aligned and the right people were in the right place at the right time. Importantly, Senator Bobby Gonzalez, then our representative, was in the legislature, and Michelle Lujan Grisham was elected our governor. In January 2019, the legislation extending the statute to include every New Mexico county was on the governor's desk, and she signed it into law. Excuse me. Now we want to take a little time to demonstrate that the requirements for this designation as set forth in the statutes have been met. Additionally, the photos will provide a reminder that although our community has changed, there is much that remains the same. In the Ranchos Valley, the past is honored and is to a great extent part of the present. Here, we remember our history. This morning, I happen to be the one standing here, but you, as the decision makers, and somebody didn't turn off their cell phone, need to see in your mind's eye that before you are 1,500 Valley residents who are not sheepish, with petitions in hand, as well as many others who contributed generously with cash donations, time, and labor. There were volunteers that stuffed 4,500 envelopes, posted yard signs, hung banners, knocked on doors, and collected signatures in sun, wind, and rain, and the occasional rainbow. And the amazing collection of materials in our application was compiled to present the qualifying information for Las Comunidades del Valle. It includes background on surveys, land grants, acequias, and infrastructure, as well as maps and charts for you to easily visualize how Las Comunidades satisfies the statutes, thus enabling you, as the sole authority, to designate Las Comunidades del Valle de los Ranchos a traditional historic community. Let us consider the applicable statutes. In granting traditional historic community status to an area, the only regulation is on the powers of an adjacent municipality. They may not annex and they may not exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction over any area within a traditional historic community. Statutes that regulate these municipal powers are rare. We are fortunate to have elected officials who recognize the importance of historical communities being empowered to maintain their independence and identity. The traditional historic community statutes are powerful tools, and to qualify, a community must satisfy a rigorous set of requirements. Statute 321.1 requires proof of support in the form of a petition signed by 25% of qualified electors of the area, collected in 60 days. Randy Audio and I had a little disagreement about that, but he won. Las Comunidades del Valle petition was signed by 1,500 voters whose signatures were verified by Valerie Rael Montoya, Taos County Clerk. She determined that the statutory requirement had been met in a letter that is shown on your screen. Section 1 of Statute 3-7-1 requires that the area be unincorporated. On your screen, you see the map showing that the traditional historic community boundary extends only to the town of Taos boundary and is entirely within the county. As you know, the area being proposed for designation includes the neighborhoods of La Cordillera, Llano Quemado, Los Cordovas, Ranchos de Taos, and Talpa, presented as one united community and located within the Serna and Guijosa land grants. And there are reasons for this. Everyone will agree there are no hardline boundaries that delineate one neighborhood from the other, and it is not the place of the Ranchos de Taos Neighborhood Association to create neighborhood boundaries, nor would they want to. There aren't signs or markers to indicate that you are leaving Talpa and entering Ranchos or going from Llano Quemado to Los Cordovas. The neighborhoods of the valley of the Rio Grande del Rancho function as a unit and cannot be divided as is demonstrated in this application. That said, each neighborhood does have defining characteristics, and residents will always identify themselves by the neighborhood they live in or come from. As an example, if you're born and raised in Talpa, you will always be a brujo or a bruja, the local nickname, no matter if you later move to Ranchos, Valdez, or Arroyo Hondo. The other qualifications required in Statute 371 are for a community or neighborhood to be identifiable and to have existed for over 100 years, to have structures associated with the identity, and to possess a distinctive character that distinguishes it from surrounding areas. In the case of Las Comunidades del Valle de los Ranchos, these qualities are tightly intertwined. So let's proceed with looking at how the requirements are satisfied. Let us look at structures. Each of the neighborhoods contains structures and landmarks well documented to be in existence for over 100 years. Many that are still in use and are vital elements of the area have been dated to the 1700s. Valley settlements were established within the context of the Cristobal de la Serna and Francisca Antonia Guijosa land grants in 1715. These grants were established in accordance with land use codes set forth in the law of the Indies. The land grant areas were required to have water for establishing acequias, for irrigating crops, orchards, and gardens, and for household use. The grants were required to include grazing land for animal sustenance and sources for building materials and fuel wood. We begin with water, our rivers and acequias. Water is a reason our neighborhoods came into existence. In the 1700s, settlements could only be created where there was sufficient water for crops, livestock, and personal use. If we had to choose a primary motivation for establishing a traditional historic community and remaining under county governance, it would be the preservation of our acequias that date from the early 1700s, possibly earlier. Structures are indicated along acequias and roadways on these detailed views of the land grant surveys from 1894 and 1901. The next slide shows the vigas and latillas coated with a blue-tinted tierra blanca in a residence with vigas dated to 1758, using tree ring dating. This and several other houses of a similar age are located along a venita that flows from the Acequia Madre del Rio Chiquito, most certainly because of the proximity to the water source. The acequias are one of the ties that bind our 5 neighborhoods into one indivisible community. The interruption of the acequia system at any point will break the bond and the acequias would be lost. This chart lists the 22 acequias and 5 neighborhoods. Going down the columns, you will see that every neighborhood is irrigated by 6 or 7 acequias, except Talpa, which has a total of 11 acequias. Going across, you will see the neighborhoods served by each acequia, usually multiple neighborhoods. This slide is enhanced satellite imagery showing vegetation coverage. You can clearly identify the Rio Chiquito and Rio Grande del Rancho coming into the valley from the south and making their way through the length of the valley from Talpa to Los Cordovas, where they join the Rio Pueblo, about 5 miles. The New Mexico State Engineer shows 22 named acequias within the valley. From the Acequia Madres, that are the arteries of the system, flow miles of venitas or veins. The image visually demonstrates the area of irrigated land in dark green and the areas of settlement where reflective rooftops and roadways appear in white. This also illustrates that there is much less vegetation and many more structures within the town of Taos boundary, the area in the upper right, with Taos Plaza indicated near the top of the image. The acequias that once watered the town no longer flow, and most surface water rights have been signed over to the town and transferred to wells that tap the groundwater for residential and commercial development. The establishment of commissions for the maintenance and governance of acequias provided for equitable distribution of water and still perform those functions today. The acequia commissions are likely the oldest governmental body in the county. In acknowledging the acequia system, we must also recognize the Talpa Reservoir, which receives water from the Rio Chiquito via the Talpa Reservoir ditch. Construction began on the reservoir and acequia in 1922 and was completed in 1930. They were remarkable undertakings, constructed using only manual and animal labor and are still in use today. John MacArthur, chairman of Acequia del Monte del Rio Chiquito, and Daryl Maestas, chairman of Acequia Madre del Rio Chiquito, are pictured opening the compuerta at the Rio Chiquito diversion, letting water flow into the Talpa Reservoir ditch. The reservoir holds 11 acre-feet of water that supplements water in those two acequias. Later in the 1700s and early 1800s, structures were built in each neighborhood to serve educational and spiritual needs and life cycle celebrations. This chart identifies the structures built in each of the neighborhoods. The following images show a few of these structures. San Francisco de Asís Church on Ranchos de Taos Plaza, dating from 1815, is the hub for the neighborhood capillas of Nuestra Señora de San Juan de los Lagos on the Talpa Plaza, with an altar screen dated 1828. Nuestra Señora del Carmen in Llano Quemado, and San Isidro serving La Cordillera and Los Cordobas. Moradas were constructed by Los Hermanos in Talpa and Ranchos. Camposantos, cemeteries, and schools were established in each of the neighborhoods. Don Nicolás Sandoval built a chapel in Talpa known as the Duran Chapel, and the San Isidro Oratorio in Los Cordobas was consecrated by Don Juan Felipe Romero. Fortified haciendas, communal plazas, and torreones were built for defense. Ranchos de Taos Plaza, and many of these buildings and several residences are on the national and state registers of historic places. Farmers raised a variety of crops, and the Ranchos Valley was the breadbasket of Taos. Families built molinos along the acequias to process the agricultural production. In 1879, Alexander Gusdorf built the steam-powered Great Western Mill with an output of 10,000 barrels of flour a year on the south side of Ranchos Plaza. The mill burned in 1895 and was not rebuilt. Beyond the physical manifestations of adobe brick and mortar, many communal activities unite the valley. Residents from each neighborhood join the Enjare every June to refurbish San Francisco de Asís Church. Parciantes on the acequias participate in the Spring Limpia to ensure the unimpeded flow of water for seasonal irrigation. Las Posadas are celebrated at San Francisco de Asís and at the capillas leading up to Christmas. Neighborhood faithful gather at capillas to celebrate their saints' days. Animals are brought to Ranchos Plaza for a blessing at San Francisco de Asís Church. On New Year's Day, as well as other occasions, Los Comanches gather to perform songs and dances that have been passed down over many generations. On behalf of those of us who reside in Los Comunidades del Valle de los Ranchos, and those who appreciate and love the land, and the people, we thank you for your consideration of our application to be designated a traditional historic community. This will be a major step in keeping our valley whole, an entity greater than its individual parts, but that would be broken with the loss of any portion. Your affirmation of Ordinance 2022-5 and Resolution 2022-70 designating Las Comunidades del Valle de los Ranchos a traditional historic community will also preserve the land base of Taos County, as it should be. Just one more item. Tonight at 5:30 is the Mass to begin Las Posadas in Talpa at Nuestra Señora de San Juan de los Lagos. Everyone is invited, and there's a meal after at the community center. I've also been asked to invite everyone for the other Las Posadas leading up to Christmas. The last one on Christmas Eve will all be at St. Francis on the plaza. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Patterson?